But who are you to tell somebody?
Well, who are you to tell a jury of 12 Americans?
Well,
you're implying. Hang on, Ariel. Hang on, Ariel.
20 years ago, but you're cutting me off. So
well, no, you're cutting me off.
20 years ago or 10 years ago, as you just said, there was a movement with Me Too where women were actually starting to be heard, and now we're just going back to regular status quo.
No, that's not true. No.
Treated as liars and martyrs.
No, hang on.
The story has to withstand scrutiny.
Hang on one second. I was going to say, Ariel, just to be clear, they have been heard. Right? They went into a criminal court.
I said believed. I said we are back.
Can you not interrupt me, given you didn't want me interrupting
you?
Thank you. They have been heard for 6 weeks, and they weren't believed. So it's not a question of women not being heard. They've had their chance to try and prove their case, and so much evidence came out which contradicted what they had to say, including very powerful evidence from the Punisher, who I'm about to interview. But this idea that somehow this is about women being silenced, not being heard, and so on, the complete opposite has happened. And what you're actually doing is you're saying this jury of 12 Americans didn't know what they were doing or had some weird desire not to listen to women. It seems to me they listened very carefully to the evidence and they've reached a conclusion they didn't believe these women. And you know what, Ariel? Sometimes women lie.
What's going on, y'all? Welcome back to another episode of Raw Reacts. I got a great episode for today, but I need y'all to like, comment, subscribe. Diddy has been acquitted on his all his major charges, but of course we have some very upset feminists in the comments as well as on platforms and podcasts and stuff. We're just gonna delve right into it. This is gonna be a good show. Like, comment, subscribe. Let's go, baby.
Suge Knight's former attorney, Matthew Fletcher, who's repeatedly questioned the strength of the prosecution's case, and Ariel Mitchell-Kidd, a lawyer who's represented other women who claim to have been Diddy's victims. Well, welcome to all of you. Matthew Fletcher, let me start with you, because you've been very clear with me in the many times you've appeared on Uncensored during this case that you believed they were not going to get convictions on the more serious charges. And what is fascinating about that, A, that you've been proven right, of course, but also that in the Southern District of New York, the success rate for federal prosecutors is 93%. You know, they hardly ever fail. So just why do you think here, I mean, it's being billed as Diddy beats the feds. Obviously, he's not complete.
Yeah, I just have to add this in there. Most of the time, the Southern District of New York is not fighting against a team of lawyers worth $10 million. That's why they win a lot of the time. That's why that conviction rate is so high, because people they're copping out. Like, for real, that's a huge reason why. Let's go.
He beat them, but he's only been found guilty of the least serious charges. Why do you think that has happened?
They got to charge him
because the evidence was weak. I've said from the very beginning. I've got over 100 jury trials. I did this for 23 years. All I do is trial consulting now. I can spot a bad case a mile away. And the first witness in this case, from the first witness in this case on, this was always about the government saying he's a bad person, which he is. He's a horrible, rotten woman beater, as I told you last time. Agnifilo is going to get up there and say, convict him of every single count of domestic violence, but there aren't any counts of domestic violence. He did that. I told you before that they were going to sit there and say that these women enjoyed this, there was no coercion, there was no duress, and to show that one video of what happened years ago, that's what they built their entire case on.
Yeah,
and
their failure.
It's horrible, but he wasn't charged with that. Racketeering, RICO, is meant for particular vices, and those vices don't include shipping in prostitutes, and unfortunately they don't also include beating your wife or your girlfriend. That's what he was. He's a wife beater or girlfriend beater. He was never should have been charged with this. Never close. All the people who were wringing their hands and saying, oh, well, they must have convicted him in four counts. It's not even true. They never believed the word Cassie said. They never believed the word Jane said. That jury wasn't even out. 1 hour of deliberations, they came and said, Judge, we need to throw juror 25 off because he's not deliberating. That told you there was already a group of people together who were willing to go in one direction or the other. That jury deliberated 3 hours, essentially, before they had conviction or had verdicts, which a fast verdict like that, in my experience, tells me that's clearly a defense verdict. Clearly. They came back today and it was over. It wasn't a strong case. It was a strong case in the media and all the pundits who wanted to say he's a woman beater, which he is. That doesn't equal a RICO charge.
No, well, you've been very consistent on that. I mean, given the convictions he's now received, what is his likely sentence? I mean, each count, I think, is a maximum of...
Got to give him 2 years.
It's a maximum of 10 years on each count. So what do you think you'll get?
Yeah, but the feds are different. First of all, he's convicted of procuring a prostitute. If we're going to start throwing music moguls and billionaires in prison for procuring prostitutes, we're going to need to expand the prisons. We're going to have to get, alligator Alcatraz fired up. But, under the guidelines, he has no criminal records, basically. So he should get the minimum sentence, which is 2 years, and they could screw him over and run him bow-legged and do him consecutively. There's no reason for them to do that. I expect at 1 o'clock the judge is going to give him bail. I don't know why they wouldn't. I mean, there's very few people in federal prison right now for these charges, so I would be surprised if he didn't get bail, and he should get the minimum, because that's what, they're not going to look at beat up Cassie. That's not relevant.
No, it's irrelevant. But let me ask you this, on a technical point. Can the time that he served in prison then be removed? Say he gets 2 years to run concurrently on both counts, so he serves 2 years. Would they remove time served, or is that irrelevant?
The judge can do whatever the judge wants to, but he gets his credit. In feds, it's day for day, so he gets $1 for every dollar he put in. So he's 7 months into this already. So if they run him concurrently, he's looking at probably a 20-month guideline, and you knock off 7, and there's a very real chance that he's not ever going to see a federal prison. That's if it doesn't get if the president doesn't do something with it, because this is the kind of thing that you can see someone granting a pardon on. I mean, it's the White Slave Trade Act. That's real difficult to sentence somebody on the White Slave Trade Act in 2025, just from a practical standpoint.
Okay.
The government failed miserably.
Yeah, well, they clearly have. Ariel Mitchell-Kidd, you represent a number of women in civil cases against Sean Combs. What is your reaction to this verdict?
Well, I think it's important that we discuss the lack of diversity that was on the prosecution team. That was probably my most concern when I faced them, when I had a hearing for a motion to quash during the grand jury testimony. I was very concerned when I was looking across from me at 6 white women and them not being able to grasp just exactly how to convey what has occurred to a jury and being able to relate these things to a jury. Of course, my clients are very shocked at all of this. I am shocked. I'm actually very shocked at how they were able to reach the transportation aspect, but not the other 2 charges, because one kind of flows with the other.
Well, they don't though, really, do they? Because the transportation is that you're transporting people illegally across state lines for the purpose of prostitution. But that doesn't mean there's any coercion. And in fact, they have rejected all the charges, which would then lead on to a coercive situation. No sex trafficking.
You can't cut me off and let me not finish my statement.
Sure.
So in reference to, first of all, the bar they have to meet. It's a very, very high bar in criminal court. It is beyond a reasonable doubt. So, of course, it's clear that he did these things, transporting people for prostitution, the prostitutes, like you just said, the Punisher, who you'll have later, and other men who have said they were transported, as well as the women who said, the Jane Does, who said they were also transported for this reason. However, when we talk about the coercion, I thought the elements were met.
Of course you think
are
that.
asking me where I think the prosecution fell short, was I think taking 6 weeks to put on their case was a mistake. It was overkill. I think had they shortened and streamlined their case, maybe in a 3-4 week at max point, they would have been successful.
And when you say the prosecution team wasn't diverse enough, what exactly do you mean? What are you saying?
There were 6 white women, so there was not any other voice other than a white woman's voice being heard. There was not a man's voice, a man's perspective of any race, let alone any other race, especially a Black voice, considering just how, I don't even know what the word impactful is, not even a good enough word to describe Diddy's, I want to say impacts, but that, again, that's not even a good enough word. His chokehold, I'll call it, on the Black community. So when I look at, like, for example, R. Kelly, who, in my opinion, didn't do half as much or a quarter as much as Diddy did, for him to be in jail for 25 years and Diddy to essentially be getting possibly 10 to 20 years, 10 years max on each count, I don't understand.
This woman's a lawyer. I really feel bad for her clientele, man. Straight up, man. If you listen to the court case, and I haven't even listened to that much of it, but I know enough to know what the court case is about. It is about racketeering and sex trafficking. Okay? It does not equal. They were not able to prove racketeering. It does not equal. What he did does not equal racketeering. Is he a woman beater? Yes. Is he an abuser? Yes. Did he probably take advantage of his power a little bit and his money? Probably. Most people do when they get that kind of money. But is this racketeering? No, it is not. Did he sex traffic? No, he didn't. Like, you might have, transported a prostitute, but didn't Cassie do the same thing? Wasn't she calling them and setting up stuff and all? She was doing the same thing. And I find it so funny that people are so, especially women, are so against it. Oh, that was sex trafficking. But y'all getting flew out every fucking other week out on Spirit to go fuck some celebrity. So, but y'all are not getting sex trafficked though? Like, come on, man. Let's be for real. Y'all are not serious, man. I mean, it doesn't surprise me that she's representing these women who are basically suing Diddy because they didn't make it big. That's basically what this is over. Y'all are suing Diddy because y'all lives came to a halt because y'all didn't get the stardom that y'all wanted. That's why you're there. And that's why it was so easy for the defense to cross-examine and basically destroy these people on the stand. Like, straight up. Like, come on, man. They all have agendas, yo. Let's be for real.
I think what Diddy did
Could it
was
be?
more
Could it be,
egregious,
Ariel?
and there was more evidence.
Could it be, Ariel, that we're just in different times? That when R. Kelly went down, we were still in the kind of full flow of the Me Too movement, the Time's Up campaign. There was a kind of, real zealous desire to put bad men away for long periods of time, Harvey Weinstein and others, and that the mood has changed somewhat now, and that people listen to the evidence, particularly with Cassie Ventura, where she settled with Diddy for a lot of money, many millions of dollars, had her rent paid, that she, in all the text messages that were leaked, carried on sending him very loving text messages, talking openly about wanting to do the freak offs. The Punisher, who I'm going to interview again a little later in the show, when I interviewed him, he was very persuasive that everything that he was involved in was not only consensual, but Cassie was the one driving it all. She was the one paying him. She was the one organizing everything. Diddy just sat in the corner.
And it had changed, and it should change, because so many women, I'm sorry, but have abused it. They have abused it. They've used it to their advantage. They've used it to get over on people. So if you're gonna be mad at anybody, be mad at those women that have done that to y'all. Straight up, man. They make it harder for real victims to get actual real justice because they scam the system. And be mad at them. Don't be mad at us. Be mad at them.
She was the one paying him. She was the one organizing everything. Diddy just sat in the corner watching them.
But let's be for real. Cassie didn't have her own money.
Why not?
So if that was the case, why did her parents take out a loan to pay Diddy for that
Right, but my question is,
so
whether, listen, I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying.
And this was her thing.
Okay, but Ariel, you're missing my point. I'm not saying whether it's right or wrong. I'm saying, do you feel like there's a different mood now about these cases?
I was about to say, I was trying to get to what your question was, which is, I would hate to think that the application of the law is on the whim of the attitude of the people. So that's what you're implying, that because the wind has changed, there's an inappropriate application of law. And I would hate to think that we live in a society where that is.
Well, hey.
Okay, Bruce Rivers, I mean, you were very confident that he was going to go down to prison for the rest of his natural life. That is clearly not going to happen. So how do you feel about this verdict?
Well, I think the case was overcharged to begin with.
It was.
And what the defense did in this case, they really focused on the free will of Cassie Ventura. When you have somebody that's a hanger-on, somebody that is getting something out of this, as opposed to somebody who's being forced into something, that's where I think the defense really won the day. And, I was going basically on the sensationalistic nature of the conduct, because it really is bad. But when you really apply, I just tried one of these RICO cases here in Minneapolis on a gang case about a month and a half ago, and it's really easy to prove. But the thing about it is here, the court can use some of this acquitted conduct in sentencing, and so it's the final chapter hasn't been written.
He may still get a substantial prison sentence. You think
he could? He could. The average person wouldn't, but the average person doesn't have all this other conduct.
Relax.
But how much of that is relevant to what a judge may decide should be a sentence? I mean, I don't think this judge is going to. I mean, the judge, for example, can't bring in the appalling beating video because the statute of limitations is over for that, right? It's not even relevant legally.
Oh, sure it is. All the conduct of Diddy throughout this whole thing is relevant. The judge will take into consideration the whole picture of Diddy, not just the offense for which he's charged. He's got what I think he's like 7 months in or something like that. So if you just look at the low end of the guidelines, he's almost got that served. And so a judge may say, this is not what the message I want to send to the public. And the judge very may well, he could sentence him consecutively. I doubt that he's going to. But
hasn't the jury, look, I mean, isn't the bottom line here that the jury seems to have concluded, and we may hear from some jurors, but I've just seen a statement from Cassie Ventura's lawyer, Doug Wigdor. He says, we're just pleased that he still faces substantial jail time, or that remains to be seen. By coming forward with her experience, Cassie left an indelible mark on both the entertainment industry and the fight for justice. She displayed unquestionable strength and brought attention to the realities of powerful men in our orbit and the misconduct that's persisted for decades without repercussion. I'm not sure she has established that in terms of the eyes of the jury. I share the general view that video of Diddy beating her up in the hotel corridor was disgusting. He's clearly an appalling woman beater. However, that's not what he was charged with. And in terms of the charges, it just seems to me they didn't establish that any of this was non-consensual.
There's some truth to that, but they could have decided the RICO on the fact that there wasn't an enterprise. I mean, they could have just, we don't know why they acquitted on the RICO. On the sex trafficking, it has to be forced part of coercion, but they could have acquitted on something else. And I think one of the things, like you said, Pierce, is that they really focused on the free will, and they had plenty of evidence to back that up. All the text messages saying, I can't wait for the freak off,
Right.
I mean,
well, I found, listen, as somebody, just looking at it with a journalist eye, I found that pretty persuasive for the defense. And again, I think it comes back. I mean, I'll bring Matthew back in here. The reason I mentioned the changing mood really about these kind of stories is that I think that people have become a little bit more cynical about cases where women have stayed in touch with the alleged abuser in a very loving and apparently very consensual way for a long period after the abuse is said to have happened. And then you add in the fact that there was a big settlement and Cassie took all that money and so on and so on. I think when you put it all together, a lot of people may feel differently now than they would have done, in 2019, 2020.
Now, first of all, R. Kelly got convicted because he was screwing kids. That's the big difference. To equate R. Kelly with Puff, it's wrong, and it's silly, it's nonsensical. R. Kelly was guilty of screwing around with kids. No time 50 years ago or 50 years from now will that be okay. This was a bad case. No one believed Cassie. Here's all you need to know. Every single count in which the credibility of the alleged victims was put into question, the jury came back 36 times and said not guilty. Every single case, every single charge that had anything to do with Cassie or with Jane, the jury absolutely did not believe them, found them to not be credible, even to the extent to convict someone who's on a video beating the living snot out of the woman. That tells you all you need to know about the case. The media and people, lawyers, plaintiffs' lawyers who wanted to sue him said, oh, she's so convincing. It's hard to feel sorry for a woman who's instructing a sex worker on how to urinate in their mouth and telling her how to do it. And the Punisher, who I think is just an absolute star, explained this to such a point of view, I would threw my hands up because I literally go, I don't know, you can't have better testimony than that, other than when Jane said she thought that P. Diddy was a cuckold. And if the prosecution, if they didn't think they had to do it, the defense didn't think they had to do it, they could have called, any head of the human sexuality department and said, tell us about the swingers lifestyle, tell us about water games, tell us about this, put on the videos. That's clearly what it was. We don't have to guess because the jury has told us they believed what the defense team put out there. And Tenny Garagos from the very beginning set the stage for this, the tenor. This is all consensual, it's nothing coerced, and the jury believed every single word of it. Yeah. The two convictions are just based upon plane tickets and receipts. That's all. It literally didn't need any testimony from any of the two alleged victims, and I don't know why we're calling them, well, other than the videotape. In this case, they were found not to be victims. They were found to be incredible witnesses, and the evidence from their own mouths and their own fingertips and their own text messages proved that they shouldn't be believed, and the jury obliged them and didn't believe a word they said.
Yes, true. Ariel, in terms of the women you represent with civil actions against Sean Combs, how much will this verdict affect those? I mean, does it make it more difficult now to win a civil case?
Before I get into that, I want to just address this verdict really just goes to show how much women are really truly not believed.
How women are not believed? Come on, man. Let's come on with that. That is so dumb to even say that, man. People lie. People include women and men, kids. People lie. People lie, man. It's just what it is, man. This whole believe all women bullshit, it's bullshit. That's the reason why, because we believed all women with the whole Me Too movement and all that shit, it allowed so many fraudulent cases to slip through. Women who were just literally vengeful of their baby daddies, vengeful of their ex-boyfriends. Like, it allowed all that shit to slip through. What are you not understanding about that? This girl is clearly in her feelings, man. And peers, if we ever get to meet one day, which we really will, hopefully we will, don't bring on stupid bimbos on your show, man. The airheads that only act, she's going off of straight feelings and emotions. Yes, we know he's a woman beater, but this is not about that. It's not about that. You can't sit up there and say, oh, I thought it met the threshold. You didn't think it met, you couldn't have thought it met the threshold. Otherwise, you don't know how the legal system works. There's no way that you would think that. Like, come on, man. Like, be for real, yo.
But who are you to tell somebody?
Well, who are you to tell a jury of 12 Americans?
Well,
you're implying. Hang on, Ariel. Hang on, Ariel.
20 years ago, but you're cutting me off. So
no, you're cutting me off.
20 years ago or 10 years ago, as you just said, there was a movement with Me Too where women were actually starting to be heard, and now we're just going back to regular status quo.
No, that's not true.
No. As liars and martyrs.
No, hang on. The story has to withstand scrutiny.
Hang on a second. Ariel, just to be clear.
And I like that you said that. I don't know if you guys caught what bro to the left, what is that? I'm sorry, to the right of Pierce said it has to withstand scrutiny. Y'all want to just believe all women and just don't question it. No, man, hell no. That's why the fraudsters, this bullshit, vengeful women have been able to slip past. Like, can't you see that? That's ruined your movement. That's ruined your movement, man. Like, come on, man.
It has to withstand scrutiny.
Hang on a sec. I was going to say, Ariel, just to be clear, they have been heard. Right? They went into a criminal court.
I said believed. I said we are back.
Can you not interrupt me, given you didn't want me interrupting you?
Yeah,
thank you. They have been heard for 6 weeks, and they weren't believed. So it's not a question of women not being heard. They've had their chance to try and prove their case, and so much evidence came out which contradicted what they had to say, including very powerful evidence from the Punisher, who I'm about to interview. But this idea that somehow this is about women being silenced, not being heard, and so on, the complete opposite has happened. And what you're actually doing is you're saying this jury of 12 Americans didn't know what they were doing or had some weird desire not to listen to women. It seems to me they listened very carefully to the evidence, and they've reached a conclusion. They didn't believe these women. And you know what, Ariel? Sometimes women lie.
Yes, they do.
I'm not saying, but okay. Okay, who's saying that? People lie. Women or men. Men
Yes.
lie, women lie,
Yes.
numbers don't. So we all know that.
So why are you saying it's a throwback to when women weren't believed?
Women are not being believed. So there were 8 men on a jury who, again, I'm saying to say they heard them, I don't think they did.
Women.
So believe them definitely, because you can't believe somebody if you not truly are listening to them. Why? Because you're
that's an outrageous slur. You've got no evidence they didn't listen to them.
No man on this panel, all 3 of you, will never be in a position of any woman in any scenario where you can be taken advantage of, where you can be literally abused and then not be heard and be believed after the fact. So I'm just saying there are 3 men who will, and 8 men on that jury who will never know what it's like. And instead of trying to understand the position that a woman could be in, and a woman like Cassie and a woman like the other Jane Does who testified in this matter, they completely disregarded it.
No, they didn't. They didn't disregard it. They didn't believe it. They didn't believe it. And what you're doing, you're basically saying no man can ever be on a jury fairly in a case like this. There's no evidence to suggest that whatsoever. The evidence was Ariel. On the evidence that was presented, if I'd been on that jury, I'd have come to the same conclusion.
A man, I would assume a man would.
Actually, most women I know who studied the evidence properly also reached that conclusion.
Oh.
And it's some men I talk to who reach the opposite. So I'm not saying any men or all men, because every person is different. But what I'm saying is men in general who don't, the men who I know who do understand, had women who experience that like their mothers. So they experience that in tandem with their mothers. So they have a better understanding of how abuse works, how the cycle of abuse works, how women typically go back to their abuse. But outside of that, you asked me about how did this affect my clients and our cases moving forward.
Yes,
it does not. This case had no effect and would have no effect. We have our own bars that we need to meet in terms of the preponderance of the evidence that we need to reach in our cases. And we are also glad, just in the same voice with Mrs. Ventura, that Diddy will be going to jail. He has skirted, and for there to be this assertion that Diddy has been this law-abiding citizen who hasn't been through this multiple times before, this is really just the only time he got caught up. So I think all of that will affect him, and we are very happy to see him be convicted. We are very happy to see what type of jail time he faces, and we are more excited to litigate our case.
She's very clearly triggered. That's all this is. This is all feelings. This is all feelings, man. I don't understand how a lawyer, this person's a lawyer, can go into this situation after they've heard all the evidence and all this stuff and still say, oh, well, I still think he's guilty of racketeering and RICO charge and sex trafficking. I don't understand it at all. I don't get it. And even though she sat up there and said it's not going to affect my clientele, it's not going to affect it. Yes, it will. Yes, it will, because it's going to start making motherfuckers start looking at that shit and be like, yo, what the fuck? Why are we believing these people when they sit up there and they constantly lie? The people that you're representing are the reason why believe all women has become a joke now. That's why. That is exactly why. And you're gonna keep on sitting up here pushing it as if you're doing a good job. And we're gonna get this. We're gonna litigate. We're gonna do this. We're gonna do that. Y'all ain't gonna get shit. Y'all ain't gonna get shit. For real. It ain't gonna happen, man. It ain't gonna happen. Diddy's too powerful for you, your little weak ass lawyer fucking job, and yeah, for real. He just is, man. He just is. And I can tell by the way this person's talking that they're not very educated. You can say you're a lawyer, but you're not a very educated lawyer. You're probably not very good at your job either. Like, I'm just keeping it real, man. I'm just keeping it real, man.
Final word to you, Bruce, just quickly.
The women's cases were heard. They had to withstand scrutiny. The jury, that included women, were unanimous in their rejection of their story. Simple as that. And he is going to get some significant prison time, and he's already done significant jail time. So, hopefully he engages in other behavior, not so risky.
Yeah, I agree. Panel, thank you.
If numbers don't lie, it's 30. Let me say this. If numbers don't lie, it was 36-0. 36-0 in the counts in which the women jurors and the male jurors were asked, do you believe what Cassie and Jane Doe say? 36-0 said we do not believe them.
Yep.
Numbers don't lie.
Pretty overwhelming, you might think. Thank you all very much. I appreciate it. Well, Young Jock and Senator.
Right. Numbers don't lie. Numbers do not lie. And it came back, man. It came back, man. See, this girl wants us to just believe women, period, and have no pushback and have none of that. Just believe them and just let them get the money and just let him go to jail and be buried forever. No, that's not the way this shit works. It's not gonna work like that. And because of that kind of attitude, that's the whole reason why Me Too is a shit movement and it will continue to be a shit movement. I do not believe all women. I don't believe all people, let alone believe all women, especially like that I know. Especially given that I know that women are incredibly deceitful. All people are incredibly deceitful, but women in particular are incredibly deceitful, man. They lie. And if it wasn't for these text messages and all the situational evidence, you probably wouldn't even heard. She would have never even admitted it. She wouldn't have admitted that she was cheating on her husband with Diddy. She wouldn't have admitted that she was still texting Diddy. She wouldn't have admitted that she was initiating freak offs. She wouldn't have admitted any of that stuff. She would have just took the money, and if text messages went around to prove what she was doing and making her look like she was, you know, in on it and shit, she would have never even mentioned it. But yeah, this is crazy though, man. This is crazy, man. Let me know what y'all think about this in the comments, man. Like, comment, subscribe. Let's go, baby.